Welcome to Financial Strategies with Andrew Adjemi in Connecticut and Daniel Adjemi in Colorado.
Daniel, I heard a heart-wrenching story the other day. I have one of our clients is a minister and missionary and pastor, and he's telling me how he's praying for like 40 widows. And he says, Andrew, the reason I'm praying for these 40 widows is because it's just an egregious thing that's happened because their husbands thought it would be a great idea to collect Social Security at 62 years old or 63 or something like that. Now their husbands are dead, and they've been dead for a while, and they're getting this small, meager amount of Social Security money and having a hard time living on it. This one wants to buy these little pies that she likes, and they used to be $1.50 and now they're $3. She can't buy them anymore. Truly egregious, the fact that she's not able to live on what her husband has left her. I'm Andrew Adjemi.
And I'm Daniel Adjemi, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. Today we're talking about spouses helping spouses. And AAA, you've been doing this a long time, something like 33 years now,
Right.
and teaching for even longer. So you've seen a lot of different things going on. You've seen a lot of different people's situations.
Right.
And what do you make of this story of these 40 widows?
Well, the whole idea there is that their husbands had this great thought and idea that made sense to them, but in actuality, how it has turned out is that they didn't really give their wives, in this case, much thought about what was going to be happening to their wives. Because what happens as time goes on, inflation has occurred, and that money that they got 15 years ago that was enough for them to live on then is not anywhere near enough to live now. And, that goes back to, one of the things when I came into this business, one of the missions that God gave me is to take care of widows and orphans in distress, as that's pure religion according to James 1:27. And these widows are in distress. But in my mind, the best way to take care of widows and orphans in distress is before they become widows and orphans. And that's what this show is about, right? Is spouses helping spouses. And because when one spouse dies, what's going to happen? One spouse is incapacitated, what's going to happen to the other one? Many times people don't think in those terms. And so that's what I want to be able to address today, because even, they typically think, well, we're retiring, we need this much to retire. Well, what happens when one spouse dies? What's going to happen at that point? So that's what I want to delve into today.
So there's a couple things to think about that are pretty basic. People may have thought about or not. You retire and you want to take a pension. And a lot of times they'll have a few different options. You can take single life, and that's always the nicest, biggest number. And you say, hey, we want to live. Let's take this big number. You could take a 50% where, you get a nice big number. And then if the one spouse dies, the other gets 50% or whatever the payment could be. Or the small number is for both of your lives. And things like that come into play a lot. And if people have pension options, this is really a thought process, something you need counsel on and to sit down and really look at, not just take. They say that people spend more time deciding what refrigerator they're going to buy than they do on what investments they're going to make. But the refrigerator, like I saw one the other day, 10-year warranty, right? So like it's going to last you 10 years. Your retirement is your whole life, right?
Right. Yeah.
But you did mention Social Security, taking Social Security at 62, I think you said. Tell us about Social Security, because this is a lot of people in retirement depend on their Social Security. So it should be maybe 130 retirement. A lot of people, it's their whole retirement, or it's 2/3 of their retirement, and then the rest is savings. Tell us about why that may be a downfall, and tell us some stuff people might not know about Social Security.
Well, one of the biggest pieces that people don't often understand about Social Security is how, both spouse, if you're married, both spouses should have some kind of Social Security, even if the one spouse, was a homemaker, let's say, all of their lives, and didn't really put anything into Social Security. Well, they're going to get what's called a spousal benefit off the primary insured Social Security. So if the primary insured Social Security is $2,000 at full retirement age, the spouse will get $1,000 a month. So that is helpful. But one of the things that happens with that is when one spouse dies, the smaller one goes away. So income is reduced. And I see this all the time, Daniel. You were talking about in regard to pensions and being careful how you choose pensions. It's the same kind of thing because many times people will choose a pension to where the spouse gets less upon the death of the primary pensionee. And so if they get less when on the pension when that person dies, and they get less in Social Security when they die because one of the Social Security is going away, that creates lower income. And this is some things that people don't understand when they're doing it at home. Don't try this at home. One of the big things about pensions is they won't allow you in the past. What they've done, men especially in the past, when it was more a man's world, so to speak, or that they would, where the man was the primary breadwinner, they would take the pension for their lifetime. Well, the problem with that was they die and the spouse got nothing. And if it was a man, well, and the spouse was a woman, women typically live longer than men. So that was not good. She had nothing to live on. So because of that, they enacted laws that before that can be done, before a person can take the single take it out in a lump sum or take the single life annuity, if they're married, they have to have their spouse sign off on it and be notarized because it belongs to both of them. And that's why we're talking about spouses helping spouses, because many times spouses don't, one of the married couples doesn't think necessarily about the other one for the long term. Before we go further into that, I want to let you know that you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew Daniel Adjemi. Today's topic is spouses helping spouses, because people don't know what people don't know. And we want you to be able to at least be able to understand what questions to ask. And, a educated retiree is a happy and stress-free retiree. In order to educate you today, besides the show itself, we have a paper we'd like to give you. This one is called Women, Money, and Retirement. And you can have that for free by calling us at 800-725-7616. It will give you some perspective, whether you're a single woman or you're a married woman or you're a man that's married to a woman or whatever the case may be. If you're married, this is a paper that will be able to help you and give you some perspective that you need to have as you move forward into the future with that. But this, as we talk about, this pension and making sure that people are taken care of, you got to make sure that the spouse, whoever the spouse may be, is taken care
of. Tell us about Social Security and why it may pay to wait longer, because you mentioned that specific age. Can you talk a little bit about the ages and why it may be better for someone to wait longer?
Yeah, so there's full retirement age. And if you're born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67 years old. You can take it as early as 62, provided you meet the guidelines associated with that. But you can also wait until 70 to take it. If you take it before full retirement age of 67, if you're born 1960 or later, well, you're going to get a lesser amount. It's something in the vicinity of 30% lesser at 62, and at 63 it's maybe 25% lesser, and 64 it's 20%, something in that vicinity. And every year you wait over 67 years old, you're getting an extra 8% added to that payment, which can be quite lucrative and get bigger, especially with what they're saying about Social Security. But if you want to know more about Social Security, I suggest that you check out our show on Social Security. But this is, the earlier you take Social Security, the less you get. The longer you wait, the more you get. And that is a key thing to be able to take care of your spouse, is seeing what's happening. Many times I'm talking to people and we will talk to them about waiting until 70 years old for one of the spouses and taking the other spouse at an earlier age, because that way there, especially if we wait till 70, the larger amount to happen. That way there, when one dies, the smaller one goes away and the larger one stays for whoever lives the longest, which is a strategy that works well for some, but everybody's different. So, good question. Did I answer your question on that, Daniel? Did I hit what you wanted to, or am I off still?
Yeah, I wanted you to explain kind of why that was something, in your story. You said these people are in bad shape, and one of the reasons was because spouses took their Social Security at 62. And I just want the listeners to understand why that may negatively affect their spouse, because we want to make sure. It's easy to get caught up in making decisions for now, but typically women live longer than men. And so
Right.
if the portfolio is not set up to protect the one who lives longer,
Right.
there can be devastating consequences. We talk a lot of times about the three-legged stool of the retirement. That's another thing people really need to watch out for. Now, ideally, you have like 7 streams of income, but minimally, right? You want
Right.
3.
Right.
And we said Social Security is supposed to be about a third of people's retirement income. That's one
Right.
leg.
Mm-hmm.
Another would be maybe a pension, right? That would
Right.
be another maybe third.
Mm-hmm.
And then personal savings, which would be things like IRAs, 401ks, brokerage accounts, right? Maybe
Right.
real estate, these kinds
Yep.
of things that pays you, not the house that you live in, unless you're renting
Yep.
out rooms in your house, but investment real estate. And that makes up the three-legged stools. And that way, if something happens to one, it won't be good, but you won't be destitute, right? If Social
Right.
Security goes bankrupt or they cut Social Security, you got 2 more legs. Or if a pension has a problem, you still have 2 legs that are solid. And so
Right.
it's very important. People should pull out a piece of paper right now
Mm-hmm.
and write down where they're getting income from, and make sure you've got 3 that are consistent. Not selling stocks, that one doesn't count,
Right.
but you've got 3 legs minimally. And if you're not, then maybe you want to start looking at asking the questions, why don't you and can you do it? Do you have a pension? You have Social Security? Do you have something else that's creating income for you? A rental property, you know,
Or
CDs,
investments. Are your
investments.
investments creating income for
Yeah.
you? Most people don't, but that our clients do, and that's why we're bringing that up, because that's the way. People don't need a ton of money when they retire as much as they need an income, a check to replace the check that's leaving. Well, you've been listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi, because people don't know what people don't know. And today, we're giving away a free book for the next 5 callers at 800-725-7616. It's called Three Blind Mice by our friend Scotty McLean. Um, 3 blind mice for the next 5 callers at 800-725-7616. Call now.
This is Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi.
Boy, have you ever heard that story where there's a guy out abandoned in a life raft, just sitting out baking in the sun, just sitting there, no water, on a life raft in the middle of nowhere, floating around, just hoping and hoping that he'll be rescued. And he decides he's going to pray to God to come rescue him. And so he starts praying and he starts praying. He says, God, please, please save me. I'll obey you. I'll do everything you ask for if you just save me. And pretty soon a little fisher boat comes by and says, "Hey, you need a tow?" And he says, "No, no, I'm good. I prayed to God and he's going to come and save me." And a while later goes by and a cruise ship comes by floating past, and they throw out a line and they say, "You want some help?" And he says, "No, I'm praying to God. He's going to come and he's going to save me." And they say, "Okay." And they sail on past. And he's sitting there and he's like, "God, why aren't you saving me?" He's praying, praying. A helicopter comes by and says, "Hey, you want some help?" And he says, "No, thank you. God is going to save me." Well, he ends up dying on his raft, and he goes to judgment, and he sees God, and God says to him, and he says to God, God, I prayed and you didn't come save me. And God says to him, what did you call that fishing boat? And what did you call that cruise ship? And what did you call that helicopter? That was me saving you. I'm Daniel Adjemi.
And I'm Andrew Adjemi. Listen to Financial Strategies with Andrew Daniel Adjemi, because people don't know what people don't know is that guy didn't know that God was sending those things his way. He didn't have eyes to see or ears to hear, but hopefully people in our audience today have eyes to see and ears to hear what's going on. And the spouses helping spouses, right? And so, if you're not careful before it's too late, things may take a whole different turn and be in a different situation where you are now. So, Daniel, good story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And, that's pertinent today because many times people will think, I've talked with somebody recently that talking to him about how he needs to take care of himself so that when he's older, he's going to be able to have the money that he needs to live the life. And I said, if you don't, he's this particular guy is not charging very much for his rent. I said, you need to charge more rent. And I said, if you don't charge more rent, then you're not going to have the money you need. Then who's going to take care of you? He pointed at him. He said, God's going to take care of you. Well, if God's helping you right now by having you tell me telling you that, that you need to raise your rent, right? So income is important, and making sure that people don't run out of money during their lifetime. And when we're talking about spouses helping spouses, we've seen a lot of different things happen. Not so long ago, one of the things that spurred this show was I was talking with a man who has cancer, and he talked about how his money was all set and he didn't need any help with anything, and he's got it in 2-year CDs at whatever 4 or 5%. And I said, well, yeah, what happens after 2 years? Well, I won't have to worry about that. My wife will take care of it. And I said, well, what does your wife know how to do that? If you're the one that did this and you're the one in charge, typically one spouse handles the investments, one spouse handles the money from that standpoint. The other one is not really particularly interested in it. Can they do it? Sure, they can do it. But the question is, what factors are going to be thrown at them at that time? And that's what's so egregious. I mean, think about it for a minute, right? You put yourself in this place. This man, you die, and now if you're a spouse, how are you going to act? Well, first of all, your emotions are, you spent years, decades with, your life mate here. They're gone. You're having to deal with the emotions of that huge loss, and you have to deal with money at the same time. Ouch. How does that work?
Yeah, well, when something's expected and unexpected is two different things, right? So if you're married and let's say that the husband is managing the money, because that's a lot of what we see people come in is the husband's managing the money and the wife trusts the husband. And she says he's taking care of everything. I put it in his hands. And he's thinking, like in your story, oh, when I die, she'll take care of the money. But she's depending that he's taking care of the money and it's going to be set up in a way that she can do it. So she's not paying attention necessarily. She's saying, I trust him. He's doing good. And then he passes away. And like we've said a couple of times, typically the women live longer.
Right.
Typically they actually do a better job of managing the finances. It's so funny. We see so many times a man and a woman will come in. We'll ask them what they like, where on the risk curve that they want to be. And the guy goes, we need to be aggressive, aggressive, aggressive. I have all these losses that I need to offset with gains. And the woman's over there and she's like, if I'm earning 5, 6%, I'm happy. And you look at how much money she has, she's got piles of money, and he's got far lesser because he's been trying to be so aggressive so much. He's lost so much money. Now he doesn't learn. He's trying to offset his losses. Again, he's doing the same thing, same mistake over and over again. So making sure in those cases, the woman is saying he's a bit too aggressive for me. I'm going to manage this money myself. But in some cases, these sorts of things can happen. But the spouse is paying attention. And so when the one managing the money passes away, it can cause big problems for the other spouse.
Right, right. And one of the things is, many times people think aggressive is the equivalent of more return and say, I need to make more money, so I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to make more money. I'm going to be aggressive, so I'm going to make more money. Well, if those two were equal, you be aggressive and you make more money, they wouldn't be aggressive. Think about it. Things don't always go up, and aggressive doesn't always go up, and many times it goes down. And so that's what we're talking about. Listen, if you just joined us, you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew Daniel Adjemi, because people don't know what people don't know. And today we have a paper that we'd love to put in your hand. And this segment, we're giving away the paper "Women, Money, and Retirement." Be able to help you understand things that need to be understood about women. Many times there are a lot of myths about how women are financially responsible, or they're not aggressive, or all kinds of myths about women, like there have been over decades and centuries, right? Misunderstandings about women. But this will help you understand whether you're married to a woman or you are a woman, to be able to understand how to be able to look at things a little bit differently as we move into the future. Again, Women, Money, and Retirement, yours for free by calling 800-725-7616 now. Call now. Danielle, today's topic is spouses helping spouses. And what has brought this about is where we've seen people not thinking ahead about taking care of their spouse should something happen to them. And that works in a lot of ways. That works with financially, that works with, whether or not they have the proper paperwork in order should they die, the power of attorney, health directive, health care, power of attorney, these kinds of things, that long-term care is in place properly. And when I say long-term care, I don't mean long-term care insurance necessarily. What I mean is having a conversation with those that you love for how long-term care is going to be administered when that's needed. And different things, different strokes for different folks, but those conversations need to be had with the family and with the spouse to be able to take care of them. So, excuse me. So a lot of things as people look toward the future, and especially men being aggressive in nature, they think aggressively and they don't think about the one that they love, the one that they've been married about, and what's going to happen. What happens when someone dies? Well, it's it's a tragic event. A lifelong relationship has been severed, and just dealing with the emotions of that, if you're without any disadvantages and disabilities that people have today, without any disabilities, it's a difficult thing to address and look at. But at that time, if they're having to talk about and look at their money at the same time, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to look at their money. And if you know, and that could mean running out of money before they run out of life.
Yeah, I'd probably change it a little bit the way you said that. Not that the spouse isn't thinking about the spouse, because I think they are typically, but thinking about if the decisions that are making are going to still work, right, when they pass away. So
Right.
let's pretend there's a man and a woman, and they're married, and the man's taking care of the money, and he's aggressive. So he's in aggressive stuff, and in his mind, he's gonna have $100,000 set aside. So if markets come down, and remember, folks, markets spend about 40% of the time in corrections. So markets they may average 8%, but that's minus 37%, and then positive 24%, and then minus 10%, and then plus 30%, right? So he's got it all planned out in his mind. I'm going to be aggressive with my money, super aggressive, because over time markets have done well. I'm going to have $100,000 set aside. He dies, and she starts drawing the $100,000, 100,000. She doesn't know the plan because he's been taking care of it. The $100,000 runs out right in the middle of a bear market. So number one, she's not used to managing the finances. She says, I want to sell everything. I don't want to lose any more money. She sells the rest of the money at a loss and ran out of the cushion all at the same time. So she can't even like start doing systematic withdrawals because she ran out of the cushion because she didn't understand the plan. He would have been much better to get his 8% or whatever he's getting on this aggressive stuff, actually probably less because there's the $100,000 cushion, the 7%. It would have just been better collecting that in income, and the income would have kept paying her, right? So these are things, it made perfect sense to him in the moment, but it wasn't thinking, well, what happens? Does she know the plan? What happens if I die? What happens if we have a bear market and I die?
Right. Right. What do you do? What does she do? That's a great thing to be able to look at as you move forward. And we're going to have to take a break now. We're going to come back after a break. But in the meantime, we want to give you this book by Scotty McLean, Three Blind Mice, talking about how to be able to prepare your finances, where you have an attorney, you have a CPA, you have a financial person. So many times they go in all different directions. That's what we're talking about, is making sure that you are in control of your portfolio, your retirement, and making sure that it's going to go in the right direction and getting the right people to help you in the right time in the right way. It's yours for free by calling 800-725-7616 for the next 5 callers. 800-725-7616. Call now.
You're locked on to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi.
So Mary Ellen came into my friend Pat's office, and Pat came in and saw Mary Ellen was crying. Mary Ellen, why are you crying? He said, and she said, well, I'm crying. I'm not sick or anything, but I'm just, I'm 75 years old, and my mother lived to be in her 90s before she passed away. And my issue is that, I used to have $1 million, and I need $50,000 a year to live on. I went to my financial guy when my husband died. Back a few years ago, I went to my financial guy that he left me with, and I said I need 50,000 a year. And this was in 2007 when the market was high, and he said, no problem, I'll give you $50,000 a year. Well, then I started taking out $50,000 a year, and now my $1 million is only worth about $500,000. And this was about 2013 or so that she came into his office, and so I don't know how I'm going to live, because I can't keep taking money out, because I'll run out of money in just a few years. And Pat said, don't worry about that, Mariella. Here, I'm going to help you switch from the accumulation side into the distribution side, and the rest of the story to come. I'm Andrew Adjemi.
And I'm Daniel Adjemi, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. Today we're talking about spouses helping spouses. And AAA, that's a sad story. Unfortunately, it happens a lot more than people think.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You and I were talking earlier today about people who are still stuck in the mentality from the last 10 years, where like your capital is not worth very much. And
Right.
people don't realize that if you've got 100 grand sitting in the bank, that's costing you $5,000 a year, because you can get CDs, you can get treasuries paying 5%.
Right.
That means so things are not static, right? Right. Things change. They change. And my question is, in that story you told, was their financial person an order taker who just did whatever her husband asked, or was he a CFO?
Right. Good
right?
point. Yeah.
And do the folks listening, do you have a personal CFO, chief financial officer?
Right. That's a good point. And are you with the wrong? If there's two things there, right? She was with the wrong advisor for what she wanted. This guy was following the Wall Street mentality that the market always goes up, but that's over a long period of time. That's over decades and 50 years and what that's not over the short term, over somebody's lifetime. And was the wrong person that her husband left her with. But then, with that, ours, some people don't even have any advisor, which is fine, but they're going to need advisor, because if the spouse who's handling the finances, the investment, dies, what's the other one going to know to do about anything? And I can't tell you how many times that I've heard, oh, so, my husband would say this. I don't know what that means, but I want to make sure I'm not doing that because he said that was bad. And or my wife said this, and I'm not, I don't know what that means. Andrew, can you help me understand what that means? And so so many times the one that's not handling the finances is left in the dark, and at a time when it's really difficult because they're dealing with the death of a loved one. And I've seen it just go on for a period of time, that they either make that they wait to make decisions because they don't want to make a bad decision, and then they lose money, which puts them in a spot of running out of money before they run out of life. Or they make choices too quick that, again, are the wrong choices because they're just doing whatever somebody that comes to them says. And it again puts them in that same difficulty.
So I think what you're describing is, when you say Wall Street, you're talking about like the order taker, right?
Right.
Somebody comes in and says, I want this, buy me that seat, buy me this, buy me that. Let's do this. Let's change this plan. Then the problem is, when that person passes away, the order taker is still taking orders. Give me 50 grand. Okay, give me 50 grand. Well, my portfolio is down 40%. I probably shouldn't be selling to get 50 grand a year when the portfolio is down 40%, because I will never recover from that. But the order taker, the advisor, right? Advisor. This for people who aren't watching, right? We're doing air quotes. The advisor, it's just an order taker. So if you're not giving them orders, they're not suggesting, hey, maybe you shouldn't sell. And that's where she ran into this problem, because the order taker was just still giving $50,000 a year, not thinking about the consequences of giving $50,000 a year when the markets were down 40, 50%. I mean,
Right. Right. That was
compared
crazy.
to the CFO, and a CFO, what does a CFO do for a company, right? It brings the
Right.
CEO ideas. Hey, we have all this capital in the bank. Maybe we should buy this treasury, right?
Right.
If there was good CFOs in this banking crisis,
Right.
they might have been a little bit better off, right?
Yeah.
Because they would
Right.
have had a better strategy to manage their interest rate risk.
Right.
So the CFO is bringing the CEO, the decision maker, ideas. And if the CEOs are smart people, but if they don't know what something is or why we would do something, the CFO explains it. And that's as a retiree, as an investor, you should have a personal CFO to help you, bring you ideas, and then you make the decision. I want to do this, or I don't want to do this, or what are the risks on this, or what are the risks on that, right? That's a way to make your retirement a stress-free retirement, compared to you telling everything, because you don't know everything. You're out doing hobbies, learning new things, enjoying life. What are you doing studying markets every day so you can tell your order taker what to do?
Right. That's a crazy position to be in. Now, you listen to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi. Today, we're talking about spouses helping spouses, taking care of them, making sure that they're going to be okay into the future, even when they're gone or incapacitated. And we have a paper that we love to put in your hand to be able to help educate you further on what we're talking about today, called the 10 Warning Signs of Working with the Wrong Financial Advisor. And at the beginning of this segment, we talked about Mary Ellen, and she was with the wrong financial advisor that was an order taker, or was a stock market minded guy when they needed to be have income. And that can be disastrous to one's fiscal health, as well as physical health. So call now for your free copy. 10 Warning Signs You're Working with the Wrong Financial Advisor, 800 725 7616. Yours for free, 800 725 7616. 10 Warning Signs of Working with the Wrong Financial Advisor. Daniel, this is just hurts, is is so close to my heart in regard to making sure that spouses are taken care of, because um, you know we go through life, and I know with your mother, my wife, that I've tried to take care of her all these years. And the thing that gives me great peace and satisfaction is that she's busy being the grandmother thing, and doing all that stuff that she likes to do. But it gives me great peace is that you're taking care of her. Should something happen to me, that I go home being with God in heaven, that I'll be nice, and she'll be in good shape because you're going to be taking care of her, doing all these things we're talking about. And because we already have her set up in that way. But there's so many out there in our listening audience that are not that way, have not taken the time, don't know what to do, and they're looking to us. They're looking to people to guide them accordingly. And it's just so many times I've seen people come in who have been recently widowed or become a widower, and having to make decisions and just clueless as to what to do, and just an agony over decisions that they need to make, and it's egregious.
So if someone is in that position, and you know, analysis paralysis, disease, right? Whatever you want to say, decision making disease or something like that, that they're in this spot, right? And they don't know what to do.
Right.
You've seen this many times. What is your advice? How can people walk through this? Hopefully people are listening to this and they're changing the plan and they're getting this set up so that the other spouse will be taken care of. I
Right.
mean, we can really get into depth on some of this stuff. Like if one of you gets sick, the non-sick one is going to take care of the sick one. Well, then when that one dies, if the second living spouse gets sick, there's no one left to take care of the spouse. So they're going to need they're going to need more money.
Backups.
They're
Yeah.
going to need things. They're
Yeah.
going to need that they didn't need the first. There's all kinds of stuff. But if someone's already put in this position, there's no planning that can be done. How do they make the decisions? What's some advice that you've seen people take that can help people get through these kinds of situations?
Well, one of the big things is getting the right team on board with you to be able to be there. So many times I see people coming in. The man is maybe 10 years older or whatever, give or take, than the wife, and one of his big concerns is that who's going to take care of this money, because he's the one taking care of the investments. Who's going to take care of the investments? Who's going to take care of her should she die? And not only does he want to make sure that the money is going to be there whenever, however long she lives, because it could be 15, 20 years after him, depending on what the age difference is. If you're just a normal age, if you're the same age, it could be an easy 15 years longer. But they're wanting to make sure that that they choose who's going to help, who's going to advise the spouse once they pass away. And what's great about this is because they'll be able to try them and work with them and get comfortable with them, and the spouse can, that both people in the couple are able to do that. And so that should one pass away, the other one is comfortable with that person, as long as they have the right financial advisor, the true financial advisor for retirement, specializing in retirement income. So you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew Daniel Adjemi, and today's topic is spouses helping spouses. And we're just moving along very quickly here today, and we've got time for another break. We'd like to give you a book before we go to a break. It's called Three Blind Mice by Scott McLean. This will be able to help you be able to organize and get the right advisors in place for you to be able to be there whenever you need them, when one of the spouses dies or is incapacitated. Yours for free by calling 800-725-7616. 800-725-7616. Call now.
This is Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi.
There were these clients that we had years ago, Daniel, and I remember talking with them, and they were very concerned what was going to happen to the other spouse when one dies, and we determined, the man, if the woman died, the man was going to be just fine, and we'll call them Jimmy and Sarah, and so we were talking about that, and I turned to Sarah and I said, "Hey, Sarah, what would you do if Jimmy died?" And she started getting all teary eyed, and she was thinking about the emotions and how she would miss him so much, and not knowing financially what to do in all things, and in this case, it was, just she was going on about the difficulty of it, and I said, well, I'll be here for you. The good news is I'll be here for you to help you through that, hold your hand for you, with you on that. But then, Jimmy piped up and said, no, you wouldn't, Sarah. You would do this, and you would do this, and you would do this, and you would do this. And she said, yeah, you're right. Once she got the emotion out of it, and her head was cleared, she would realize that. I said, well, you know what? The point with that, Jimmy, is she's not going to remember that. So put that in a letter to her, or put that on a cassette tape to her, back in the days of cassette tapes, so that she can, hear that and listen and hear your voice, or whatever the case may be, and understand what she needs to do from there. I'll help her as she goes through that. But if she gets that direction from you, she's going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Adjemi.
And I'm Daniel Adjemi, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. Today we're talking about spouses helping spouses. And AAA, that's some really good advice right there. I think that's worth the ticket of admission, right? Right there.
Right.
Right there, people listening. I think that's great, because we just get caught up busy with life, busy, and forget to do simple things like that, like write down those things, write
Right.
down, record it on your cell phone, but put it somewhere that the spouse can find it.
Right.
I think that has got to be one of the top things people can do right there.
Right.
Um, Especially if it's a voice recording, because then they can hear the voice of the spouse, calming and whatnot.
Right, exactly. It's very key to that. When we're talking about them, we're talking about, directions with that. It's very important to have that meeting with the family to be able to understand what to do, as time goes on, and as, health deteriorates, how people want to be taken care of. The big thing is, nobody that I know of wants to go in a convalescent home and die in a convalescent home. They want to stay home as long as possible. So the key to that is being able to have the money and the assets in place, and the strategies in place to be able to allow that to happen, and for them to stay home as long as possible before, hopefully don't ever have to go into convalescent home. But these are some of the things how spouses can help spouses, to the title of today's show, being able to be aware of what's going on. And, for guys who are typically analytical, get involved with the emotions of the situation for your spouse's sake, and women, who are typically emotional, think about the analytical side, for the man's sake from that angle. But the key is to be able to be on the same page with what's going to happen. And guys, listen, pay attention to this. This is something I see all the time, where a guy, a woman, and her husband are sitting talking to a financial advisor, or talking to anybody, and the focus is on the man, and the woman is set aside. Is that what's happening with the professionals that you're using? Because if so, that's egregious. They need to be pulling her into the conversation as well. Sometimes, are people talking, do you have an advisor of whatever ilk, whether it's financial or law or whatever the case may be, or medical, where they're talking above your head and you're just going along with it like you know what they're talking about? That's terrible. They should be bringing it down to where the rubber meets the road, being able to speak in terminology that makes sense, that you can use to move forward. And if they're not doing that and communicating in a way, for your wife, if you don't have somebody to communicate that to your spouse, to your wife, whomever that may be, then you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Yeah, and another thing is, if you're managing your own money, does your spouse know where the money is? Does your spouse know the strategy behind how you're managing it? Or, if you're getting to a spot, maybe you need to think about getting a CFO, right? Getting
Right.
somebody to help you with that, because that's a big thing too, is understanding whatever the strategy is. And that goes back to what you're saying about, are they talking down to you? Both spouses don't have to be involved, but both spouses have to know what the
Right.
strategy is. Spouses have to know the questions to ask, right? We get people coming all the time and they say stuff like, I don't know anything about finances. It's over my head. It's over my head. And we say, no, hold on, let's slow down and let's go through this, because we can talk about it in a way that you can understand. This is important for you to understand, because if you understand the concepts, then you can ask the important questions to make sure that you're making the right decisions for the things that you need, right?
Right. Right.
Another thing to look at is what we talked about earlier, that three-legged stool. Are those things that can manage themselves? Are those things that can continue on if one of you dies? So we talked about Social Security. Social Security continues on, but one of you probably has a bigger Social Security than the other. Is it set up so that the other will get half? And if they're only getting half, is that enough? Or does money need to come from somewhere else to compensate for that loss in
Right.
income?
Right. Exactly. It's very important to know. And you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Edgemy. Today's topic is spouses helping spouses, making sure that the spouse is going to be taken care of during a capacity, during being incapacitated or death of the other spouse. Today's paper that we have to go along with the show that very easily read, about 3 pages long, 10 warning signs of working with the wrong financial advisor. How many advisors does it take to ruin your retirement? How many bad advisors does it take to ruin your retirement? One, right? You want to make sure that you're with the right one. So, warning signs that you're with the wrong one. Take this paper and read it and apply it. Yours for free by calling us at 800 725 7616. 800 725 7616, because people don't know what people don't know. And if you stick around, we'll educate you, because an educated retiree is a happy and stress free retiree. Um, Daniel, as we finish up here, we just have a few minutes left in this recording today. The thing that I wanted to say with this is, earlier I talked about that pastor was very concerned about those 40 widows. But it's very interesting, because this pastor is very concerned about his wife. And he's spending a lot of time making sure that their money is in a situation. And I've spent a lot of time working with him to get it straight, so that when he dies, because he was in Vietnam, he's got cancer, he's got Parkinson's. We know he's older than her. We know that all things being equal, he's going to pass away before she does. But he knows that she's going to be taken care of, because we worked out a strategy to make sure that she's going to have at least what she needs, if not a lot more than what she needs. She's happy because she recognizes that too. And we're going in the right direction with this. And he does that because, when looking at this, the parable where, the person says that Jesus says it's better put the money in the bank than in the ground. The word for bank there is a four-legged stool, a nice sturdy stool, having income from all these different places, 3 or 4 different places. And that's what he's got set up for his wife.
Yeah, that's great. And then to make sure that those can continue on, or that she has somebody she can trust to help her when the strategy needs to change, that she has somebody to help her make those strategies and continue on. What the original plan was, what his, in this case, plan is for the money to keep her protected, right?
Right.
And that's where, if people have, look at those stools, look at those legs to the stools, those 3 or 4, right? If it's Social Security, make sure that's going to be able to continue on. If it's a pension, is that going to go away? Or is that going to continue on to the spouse? Because you need a plan about these things before it happens. Real estate. If you've got real estate, who's going to manage the real estate if the one managing it passes away? Right? These are not passive. They may seem passive, but they're not. They need to be managed. And so to understand who's going to do that, if you're
Yeah.
rolling over CDs,
Right.
who's going to keep rolling over the
Right.
CDs? Or what happens if CDs go back to 1%
Right.
and it's not generating enough to keep that strategy, right? So these are things you need to sit down, have some real conversations, but also be real with yourself. Like, is this realistic that we're going to keep rolling over 2 year CDs at 5%
Right.
forever? Is it really realistic that
Yeah.
my spouse is going to be able to take care of all the real estate that we own,
Right.
right? If
Exactly.
I pass away, these kinds of things. Be honest. Do you have a 3 or 4 legged stool? Like we said, we'd like to see 7,
Right.
but minimally 3. Do you have 3? If you don't, you need to start working on this because it's super important to have that stress-free, dependable retirement, to have multiple streams of income because stuff happens.
Yeah.
We've been in this world, right, where we've been really blessed for the last 30 years as we've just printed money, printed money, printed money. You could buy almost anything and it go up in value. But things are changing.
Yeah.
Things are changing and you need to be a little bit more cautious, especially if you're not in the education phase of life where your greatest value, your greatest monetary value is your ability to earn, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
educating yourself, you're growing, you're getting raises, you're pumping in money.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point in time, your greatest monetary value is your assets because that's what's paying you to support the lifestyle that you want to have. And so you need to make that a little bit more cautious at some point in time, a little bit more dependable at some point in time. That doesn't mean you have to give up returns. It just means you need to change strategies. AAA, you mentioned a little earlier, people say aggressive. I need to be aggressive so I can earn more money. The thing with aggressive is people think aggressive is something different than it is. They look at the stock market at all-time highs and they say, let's be aggressive. The return on that is minimal. The risk is high. So that's
Yeah.
not really even aggressive. It's just foolish.
Stupid. Yeah.
But then when things are down at the bottom, everything's falling apart, the world's crashing, they don't want to be aggressive when your risk profile is extremely high, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it's down here at the bottom. You have a lot more upside. And so people get that backwards. So sometimes it's nice to take that out of the picture. Just take the risk, take the betting that we're at the top or at the bottom out and just let your stuff pay you, right? Sit
Yeah.
back and watch those, 4 to 7, 3 to 7 stools just send you money and you get to
Flakes.
decide
Yeah.
if you want to be aggressive with the house's money, with the money coming into you, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, Daniel, that's a very good point. Those 2 year CDs paying 5%, what are they going to be worth in five? What are CDs going to be in 2 years from now when they come due? And that's a huge thing that it takes care of a short term need, but you have a long term life in front of you that you need to be able to have that money for. And that is what we're talking about today, folks. Spouses helping spouses, making sure that the spouses have what they need to live the rest of their life without running out of money. We don't want them living on cat food. You've been listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew Daniel Adjemi. Today's topic has been spouses helping spouses. We have a book we'd love to give you before we get off the air today. It's called Three Blind Mice by Scotty McLean. It's yours for free by calling us at 800-725 7616 800-725-7616. And remember, an educated retiree is a happy and stress-free retiree.